The story begins with a young warrior gasping for breath as he faces off against a fearsome monster. It quickly becomes clear that this massive beast is a high-level dungeon boss known as the wingless dragon Ciberomos. Found on level 67, the enormous dragon launches a devastating fire attack, putting the team of adventurers in grave danger. The sorceress, terrified, warns that the attack is coming and admits she's unsure whether her defensive skill can block it. But at that moment, the armored old man notices something strange and appears stunned. Suddenly, a small green creature resembling a goblin emerges from the flames, and the dragon lets out a sudden roar as it prepares its next deadly attack. Everyone is shocked and wonders in disbelief why a goblin would be in such a place. But just as the dragon begins its massive fire attack, the goblin charges forward at incredible speed, leaping fiercely onto the giant beast and landing an immensely powerful strike, letting out a loud victory cry. Then, moving with astonishing agility, it swiftly retreats from the attack zone and lands a deadly counterattack with its wooden club. The team stands paralyzed and stunned. The blonde youth can't believe what he's seeing and questions how such a small goblin could defeat the mighty dragon with such power. They soon realize that the dragon, Ciberomos, has indeed been killed by a single strike from the little goblin, and they begin to wonder if the creature had been summoned by someone. The old man spots someone standing on a nearby hill and points them out to the group. The identity of this mysterious person who summoned the goblin becomes clear, and they realize he is responsible for this strange summoning. Sometime before this battle in another location, our protagonist Kim Cheol-soo is seen working in construction. He looks cheerful as he works, to the point where his co-workers ask in surprise why he's smiling. Kim Cheol-soo carries a large bag of cement, deeply thinking to himself that he's just a simple goblin. He drinks water and reflects on his life, accepting that it's only natural for someone like him to be weak and confined to a low-level dungeon, unable to leave it. He continues to ponder his frustration with his harsh reality, feeling that some people can become rich overnight, while a nobody remains a nobody no matter how much experience they gain. Cheol-soo overhears his co-workers talking about someone named Mr. Cha, who stopped coming to work because he's now too busy with a popular game called Gate of Heaven. It's a fully immersive virtual reality game that has become tightly integrated with real life, where those who discover hidden classes can earn great fortunes. Kim Cheol-soo recalls this famous game, Gate of Heaven, that was recently released. The game is so immersive that players forget about the real world entirely. With this technology spreading, the equipment became expensive, but thanks to internet cafes, even poor people like him can enjoy it. As the game's popularity grew, real money started flowing into it, to the point where in-game items were being sold for actual money. Kim Cheol-soo ends his thoughts with a sense of regret for the days when he used to enjoy the game. Then the scene shifts into the game, where Kim uses one of his skills and launches an all-out attack, activating a powerful move called Rock Strike, which earns him a reward of 3 ores after the successful hit. However, he finds himself frustrated with his situation and screams in annoyance, saying that it's just ridiculous. After all this hard work, he still has to do more. Even in the game, he finds himself drowning in debt. Kim begins to cry out in frustration, angrily questioning where the part is where he becomes a legendary hero, marries a beautiful woman as he had dreamed, and whether this game called Gate of Heaven is even worth it. Suddenly, Kim stops complaining. He has found an advanced healing crystal and quickly realizes that this rare crystal can be sold for at least 300,000 won, filling him with overwhelming joy. He acts wildly from sheer happiness, laughing loudly, convinced that this is the real reason he works in mining. As he enjoys this moment, other people appear behind him. One of the women notices Kim's strange behavior, and he freezes in deep embarrassment when he realizes they're watching him. Kim sees the beautiful woman and becomes even more flustered by her striking beauty. She tells him she's noticed that he mines daily, so his mining skill level must be quite high. Kim responds that he's decent at it, and the woman explains that her team was passing through this dungeon, but a large boulder is blocking their path. Even though her teammates are strong, they lack mining skills. She asks Kim Cheol-soo to help them dig through the obstacle. Kim hesitates, saying his level is low and it could be dangerous for him, but one of the team members, a dwarf, reassures him and says his only job is mining. They'll take care of the monsters. Kim looks in surprise. It's the dwarf who said that. The dwarf senses his gaze and responds by saying that Kim probably assumed that, since there's a dwarf in the group, he'd be the one doing the mining, and that he must believe dwarves are useless in combat, which made him feel insulted and disrespected. But after a quick moment of thought, Kim realizes that joining them could be a good opportunity to gain experience and some valuable ores. Still, he's anxious about how deep they are in the dungeon, and he remembers that something extremely dangerous exists in the game. something that makes him feel afraid despite the possibility of resurrection in-game, especially since the presence of that thing could have dire consequences for him. The beautiful woman approaches him again, politely and sweetly asking him to help them, because he's the exact type she likes, a strong-armed man skilled in mining. Kim feels a surge of emotion and agrees immediately, only to quickly regret it, wondering why he accepted so impulsively and recklessly. As they enter the cave, a level 7 monster appears, a gray wolf, causing Kim to panic as the monster's level was lower than he expected. Yet his own level is still far below that of these monsters. The wolf lunges at him fiercely and Kim screams in terror, crying out for his mother like a child from sheer fear. At the last moment, the beautiful woman appears and saves him using her fire skill, Salamander Flame, easily defeating the beast. She walks up to him to make sure he's okay and asks with concern if he's hurt anywhere. That woman is Catherine Lee, a level 39 sorceress. Kim is amazed by her power after she took down all the monsters with a single blow, and he thanks her for saving him. Catherine tells him not to stray too far from her again, as it's dangerous for him. For a moment, Kim thinks this might be the romantic beginning he's always dreamed of. At that moment, another team member appears, a very strong young man who easily dodges monster attacks, and mocks the situation, saying they're not here to play around. This warrior uses a special skill called Swing of the Giant Wheel, defeating the monsters with a single strike. He then explains that he's searching for a rare ore that can only be broken with high-level mining skills, which is why they recruited Kim. But despite needing his skills, Kim feels angry and insulted by the way they speak to him, sensing that they're just using him for his mining and treating him like a tool, even though they were the ones who asked for his help in the first place. Kim decides not to stay silent and confronts the warrior, telling him he's not someone to be dismissed, asserting that he has combat skills too and is not just a miner. Kim, enraged, strikes the massive boulder with all his might, trying to prove that he has combat skills and is not just a miner. He shouts loudly with his strike, declaring that he is not weak. However, despite his determined effort, the tall man and the dwarf notice that Kim hasn't managed to break the rock. They quietly discuss whether the information they received about the ore behind the boulder was accurate and mention the heavy loss they'll face if nothing is found. The tall man threatens the dwarf, saying he'll pay the price if the information turns out to be false. At that moment, Kim feels deeply insulted. He's used to being disrespected and risking his life for scraps of money, but even so, he feels disappointed in himself. He tries to calm down and continues working normally, convincing himself that this is just another boring day for him. But to his surprise, the rock suddenly breaks apart before him. Everyone is shocked to see something strange behind the rock, and Kim discovers a mysterious glowing door, immediately realizing it's a hidden dungeon. The entire team is stunned, and Kim can't believe they actually found a hidden dungeon. He excitedly says that they might receive special rewards and could even change their classes to hidden ones. When Kim joyfully shouts that they've found the grand prize, Catherine smiles and sarcastically questions whether Kim is really part of the we. Kim is filled with excitement, thinking this is his chance to change his life, just like the famous Mr. Cha he'd heard about. But he's shocked when the tall man suddenly activates PvP mode and violently attacks him. Kim falls to the ground badly injured, struggling to breathe as he loses around 480 health points, while hearing the tall man mock how hard it was to find the hidden dungeon. Catherine sneers at the situation, saying they're in a low-level zone, and all it took to reach this place was a silly mining skill. Kim glares in anger as he hears them, especially when the tall man carelessly says that Kim was just tagging along while they did all the fighting. At that moment, Kim realizes they're the ones who attacked him, and concludes that they were cowards who knew about the hidden dungeon all along. The tall man grabs Kim's head roughly and mocks him, saying of course they knew, and since Kim helped them just a bit, they'll kill him quickly. Kim's eyes widen in shock at the betrayal and attack. When Kim wakes up, he finds himself still inside the dungeon. At first, he thinks they didn't kill him and maybe showed some mercy. But moments later, he realizes that his advanced healing crystal has shattered. It was automatically used to revive him when his health hit 0, meaning he had actually died and come back to life. Kim is overcome with rage over the loss of the crystal, which was worth 300,000 won, and he screams in fury. At that moment, Kim notices that the door to the hidden dungeon is still open, meaning the dungeon hasn't been completed yet. After losing such a valuable crystal, Kim decides he won't leave. He swears revenge on the team that mocked him and decides to enter the hidden dungeon to ruin their plans and turn his life upside down. He charges furiously and with full force toward the glowing open door, vowing to make their lives a real nightmare. Kim throws himself into the hidden dungeon with all his energy, shouting with excitement that the hidden dungeon is waiting for him. But he didn't expect what came next. The entrance wasn't a flat surface. Instead, there were stairs immediately after the door, and Kim begins to fall hard inside, crashing to the ground and getting injured again, losing 80 health points. He angrily shouts that they put stairs right after the entrance. Kim Cheol-soo regains consciousness inside the hidden dungeon, finding himself lying on the ground after his fall. He realizes he has indeed entered the dungeon, but is shocked to see that he only has 20 health points left. As he looks around, he is surprised to see a massive monster sitting on a throne in front of him, a huge and terrifying goblin. Above it, a label reads, Temple of the Goblins. Kim feels disappointed by the place and mockingly wonders if this is just a secret dungeon for goblins, expecting something of a higher level. Suddenly, Kim realizes the place is far too quiet and cautiously wonders where the rest of the team is gone. As he turns, he notices a person's hand on the ground next to him, which catches him off guard. As he follows the sound he hears, Kim is horrified to see the dwarf from the earlier group lying on the ground covered in blood. Stunned, Kim immediately recognizes the dwarf and wonders what happened to him. A screen appears asking whether he can use a resurrection skill, but he responds that he doesn't have one. Kim thinks the dwarf might be hesitating to press the resurrection button out of fear of losing the chance to explore the dungeon, and he calls him greedy. Suddenly, a warning message appears on the screen, stating that the dungeon he entered is extremely difficult and far above his level, urging him to leave immediately. At that moment, Kim hears a terrifying scream. He turns in horror and realizes the voice belongs to one of the other team members. Kim watches in terror as a giant hand grabs the tall man and crushes him mercilessly. Kim finds the situation very strange. This is supposed to be a goblin temple, so why has a completely different monster appeared? The terrifying monster named Jaeger appears, and it's level 80. This causes Kim to break down in fear, convinced that this is a hopeless situation. Kim can hardly believe the monster in front of him is level 80, and he watches as the beast grabs the tall man and prepares to devour him in a horrifyingly violent way. Kim is overwhelmed with panic as he sees this gruesome scene, with the monster tearing the man apart viciously, making him feel nauseated. He tries to suppress his nausea, realizing that what he's witnessing is the worst-case scenario, and reflects on how Gate of Heaven took realism way too far. Kim begins thinking about the technology used in the game and how realistic it is, even to the point of transmitting actual sensations of pain to players. He knows that safety systems prevent severe pain from low-level monsters. But his terror grows when he hears Catherine's voice screaming desperately for help. Kim hesitates in fear, wondering how he could possibly help anyone against such a monstrously powerful creature. Then Kim remembers that the pain and trauma in the game aren't just fleeting experiences. They directly affect the brain, and in extreme cases, can cause brain damage or even real-life death. Gripped by intense fear, Kim starts running away from the monster, swearing he won't let this beast end his life in the game. While fleeing, he tries to justify his actions by telling himself it's not his fault. They were the ones who abandoned him first. He keeps running, admitting to himself that he's weak and can't help anyone, and sprints away in despair. As he runs, Kim insists he must survive, even if it means living alone. Suddenly, a message appears in front of him saying, "The Goblin Lord senses a resemblance between you and him in cowardice and weakness," leaving Kim stunned and confused. He wonders what the message means and who this Goblin Lord is. Then he looks over at the massive monster sitting on the throne and asks himself sorrowfully and in shock whether he really is as weak and cowardly as the message says. Kim Cheol-soo continues, seething with anger, addressing the Goblin Lord who had called him weak and cowardly. With sadness and fury, he says he doesn't want to be that way. He continues looking at Catherine lying on the ground and wonders aloud if they think he chose to be weak and powerless. Kim goes on to say that if he had even a shred of strength, he wouldn't have had to run. This is followed by a scene where Catherine is trampled by the monster. Kim recalls his real-life situation, lamenting how he had wanted a respectable job where people wouldn't look down on him. He expresses his dream of fighting monsters like everyone else, not being forced into mining because of the debts left behind by parents he never even knew. Kim bursts into tears and screams that he hasn't been able to achieve anything he wanted in life, and that he didn't do anything wrong to deserve being labeled as weak. He storms toward the Goblin Lord sitting on the throne and yells defiantly that he's just a goblin and has no right to look down on him. He adds bitterly that he's been looked down on in the real world and even in the game. Now even a goblin pities him. Overwhelmed, Kim shouts that he truly is a nobody, and there's nothing wrong with that. At that moment, a message appears in front of Kim saying that he has become an honorary goblin and that goblins will now aid him at any time. Another message pops up stating he has met the conditions to unlock a hidden class, asking whether he would like to change his class to Goblin Summoner. Kim reads the message in total shock, wondering what this hidden class even means. Despite the golden opportunity, Kim angrily refuses and laughs bitterly, shouting in disbelief that he rejects such a ridiculous offer. However, the system ignores his refusal and informs him that the class change to Goblin has already been completed, further fueling his anger and frustration. At that moment, the terrifying monster Jaeger returns, approaching him with a dreadful roar. Kim realizes there's no longer any escape. He accepts there's no point in running anymore, and that there's no coming back from this. He then uses a skill from his newly forced class and summons a goblin to fight in his place. A small, weak-looking goblin appears and shrieks with a high-pitched "Kee." Kim feels disappointed by its frail appearance and plans to use it as bait to distract the monster so he can escape. Kim gives the goblin a command to attack the monster and loudly encourages it to take the beast down. The goblin charges toward the monster with surprising force. The monster Jaeger lunges to attack with brutal strength and aggression. Meanwhile, Kim prepares to run away, believing this is his chance to flee. But before he can make his escape, Kim is shocked to see that the seemingly weak goblin he summoned has landed an incredibly powerful blow on the monster, causing massive damage, around 100 million points. The monster Jaeger collapses to the ground, completely defeated, leaving Kim stunned and unable to comprehend what just happened. Kim's experience points begin to rise rapidly in an insane surge after the monster's defeat, increasing his disbelief and astonishment. More messages appear, informing him that he has gained new skills like goblin feeding and goblin walking. The summoned goblin's experience level also skyrockets, leaving Kim more confused than ever by what's going on. Kim suddenly realizes in utter shock that the weak-looking goblin he summoned isn't weak at all. In fact, it's at the highest level possible. He stands frozen in place, stunned, as he recalls the scene where the monster Jaeger devoured the tall man from his former team, piercing through his body and causing severe damage. Meanwhile, Catherine looks completely terrified as she witnesses the horrifying scene, her face frozen in shock. She can't handle what she's seeing and starts screaming hysterically in the real world while wearing the virtual reality headset. One of her staff members rushes toward her in deep concern, calling out to her anxiously and trying to wake her up in any way possible. Panicked, the staff member yanks the headset off her head, realizing that the situation has spiraled completely out of control. The man sadly realizes that Catherine has suffered a severe psychological shock from which she cannot recover, and that she's entered a state of permanent retirement from the game. Meanwhile, the goblin Kim summoned continues to defeat the other monsters with astonishing ease, dealing insane damage in the millions. Messages begin appearing on Kim's screen, informing him that his level is rising rapidly due to the monsters killed by the goblin. The goblin keeps wiping out monsters with incredible ferocity, while Kim continues receiving notifications about his increasing level. Kim tells the goblin to pause for a moment so he can collect the valuable materials dropped from the monsters. He feels overjoyed as his bag fills up with loot like low-grade mana stones and wolf claws, smiling and saying he can't carry anymore. Kim thinks to himself that he managed to clear the hidden dungeon the moment Jaeger was defeated, but the rest of his team had died, and the only way to return now is through death. He turns to the goblin that cleared the dungeon on its own and is surprised that its level hasn't increased even once, while his own has jumped to level 31. Kim tries to find out more information about the summoned goblin, but a message tells him the details are unavailable, leaving him frustrated that he can't view any of its stats. He stares at the goblin in confusion and wonder, questioning whether it even makes sense for such a weak-looking creature to be this powerful, and starts wondering if it's a bug or glitch in the game. Suddenly, Kim shouts with excitement, declaring that it doesn't matter. What matters is that he should exploit this situation as much as possible before it gets fixed, proudly stating he no longer needs to work in mining and will become the best in Gate of Heaven. The next day, Kim appears at Nara Bank, waiting for his turn as customer number 36 inches is called. He sits down in front of the bank clerk, who informs him that the wolf claws he brought in are worth a total of 97,001 and asks if he wants the amount transferred to his account. Kim asks instead to send the money to another account. Kim then remembers he has more items he wants to sell and tells the clerk about them. He goes on to say he possesses rare items like Jaeger's membrane and heart, causing the clerk to react with surprise at the value of what he holds. Her eyes widen in utter shock, unable to believe what she's hearing. The clerk immediately calls for the bank manager while Kim sits there, puzzled, wondering why she needs her manager when he's sitting right in front of her. Kim is then shown sitting with the manager of Nara Bank, who pours him some tea with a smile and asks if it suits his taste. Kim coldly replies that the tea is cold, prompting the manager to awkwardly admit he forgot to boil the water. Kim curiously asks the manager why he wanted to talk to him, and the manager politely explains that he has better places for Kim to invest his money instead of leaving it in a standard account. The manager offers Kim a strong investment option with excellent returns, instead of letting the money sit idly in his account. Kim looks a bit confused and directly asks about the investment, wondering if something like this really needs the manager's personal attention. The manager smiles and tells Kim that he assumed he understood the value of what he's holding. Jaeger's membrane and heart are worth a massive sum based on today's rates. Kim is absolutely stunned when the manager informs him that their real value is 230 million won, and he stares blankly while holding his teacup. Later, Kim is seen happily holding the goblin, excitedly telling it that thanks to it, he managed to pay off 10% of his debts, playfully joking with it like it's a little puppy. He continues talking to the goblin, jokingly saying that he doesn't find it ugly, but quickly takes it back, admitting to himself that he can't lie like that. After that, Kim tries to keep the goblin out of sight while they're in the city, only to discover that he's unable to unsummon it, which causes him major embarrassment, especially when the goblin starts screaming loudly and drawing attention. People around him begin mocking the goblin's bizarre appearance, sarcastically asking who summoned it and why someone would do that in a public space. Kim's embarrassment worsens when some people mistakenly assume he is the goblin, just because he's standing so close to it, which fills him with deep inner rage. The goblin, acting unexpectedly, approaches someone in the street and begins provoking them, drawing even more attention. At that moment, a large man with an angry expression named Patton appears, loudly objecting to the presence of a goblin freely roaming the city. People around Kim begin talking about Patton, mockingly calling him the Destroyer, despite the fact that he isn't even widely known. Worry becomes visible on Kim's face as he realizes how dangerous the situation is. Someone who calls himself that probably isn't just some ordinary guy. Kim tries to stop Peyton quickly, attempting to explain that the goblin isn't hostile, but Peyton ignores him and launches a powerful attack. Peyton strikes at the goblin, attempting to kill it with one swift, violent blow. But the goblin counters with incredible speed, launching a powerful counterattack that defeats Peyton easily and inflicts massive damage. A system message then appears explaining that PK mode is active and that pain levels are limited to prevent high-level players from bullying others. People are left stunned and horrified as they witness Peyton being defeated by a small goblin. They begin whispering to each other in disbelief over what just happened. Kim quickly realizes the danger he's in if people find out that the deadly goblin belongs to him, and he becomes extremely frightened and anxious. Meanwhile, several members of Patton's guild appear. Their leader mocks Peyton for being defeated by a small goblin, calling it a disgrace. Then the leader, Hyuk, turns to Kim and tells him that the goblin is just a worthless monster, but insists it must still be held responsible for what happened to their guild. Kim begins to feel the situation spiraling out of control. He knows his goblin could easily defeat them, but killing all of them would only bring him massive trouble. Kim tries to intervene and calm things down, telling them that he'll handle the goblin himself. But the guild members ignore his warnings and threaten to kill him too if he interferes. With no other option, Kim tries to reason with them, saying that ganging up on a tiny goblin won't end well for them. But just then, the goblin launches an attack using the skill Rock Throw. With lightning speed, the goblin kills one of the guild members named Min Seong, Master of Speed, dealing massive damage and instantly taking him down. This act sends the rest of the guild members into a furious rage, forcing Kim to run away at top speed, barely believing how things have escalated so dangerously. While fleeing, Kim reflects with sadness and regret on his earlier hope that life would become easier with a powerful goblin by his side, blaming himself for being overly optimistic. As he runs, a mysterious old man appears in front of Kim, urgently calling him to follow and saying there's no time to explain. But Kim soon discovers that the man tricked him, leading him straight into a deadly ambush. The man mocks him, saying this is his path to death. A sudden message appears from the system, telling Kim that the Goblin Lord is impressed by your cunning, using your enemy's weakness and distraction to your advantage, which greatly annoys Kim due to the timing. The message continues to describe Kim as cunning and sly, angering him so much that he starts shouting in protest against the label. Kim bitterly remembers how the Goblin Lord had once called him weak and pathetic. He continues speaking with growing fury, wondering why the Goblin Lord now insists on calling him cunning as well. Kim pauses and sadly wonders why he's being labeled with these terms, when he hasn't actually done anything wrong. He keeps questioning to himself, with bitterness, why others keep calling him weak, pathetic, and sly, trying to make sense of it all. Kim Cheol-soo continues speaking to himself, insisting that he wasn't the one who started this mess. It was the others who added him to their party, and then betrayed and attacked him for no reason. After some deep thought, Kim turns to his goblin and clearly tells it that he's tired of being seen as weak by others, swearing that things will change from now on. Kim continues, speaking with fiery passion as he reveals his plan to take revenge and destroy the Enten Guild. The goblin seems excited and enthusiastic about the plan. Elsewhere, 2 guild members were leaping across rooftops swiftly, tracking Kim and his goblin. During the chase, Ji-hyun asked her companion, In-hyuk the Shadow, if it was really necessary for him to accompany her on such a simple mission. She confidently claimed she could handle it on her own. But In-hyuk warned her not to underestimate the goblin, reminding her that even though Peyton was the weakest member of the guild, the goblin had killed him with a single blow, and that there was something strange about its power. Suddenly, the 2 heard loud screams from below, causing them to stop with concern. When they looked down, In-hyuk was shocked to see their guildmate, Seongryul the Cunning, being hurled violently from above. Then the goblin appeared terrifyingly behind In-hyuk, leaving him in complete shock. In-hyuk attacked the goblin, trying to take it down, shouting loudly as he launched a fierce strike. But the shock was immense when he realized his attack hadn't caused the goblin any damage at all. In-hyuk understood in that moment that what he'd seen earlier wasn't an illusion. This goblin truly possessed terrifying power. He felt a deep sense of danger and realized he was in a critical situation that could cost him his life. In-hyuk attempted a quick strike to save himself, but the goblin easily dodged the attack with no effort. In-hyuk's fear and disbelief grew. He never imagined anyone could deflect his strike so easily. From afar, Ji-hyun shouted furiously, scolding In-hyuk for standing there frozen and asking if he was really going to let a mere goblin kill him. In-hyuk tried to calm himself, reminding himself that this was just a small goblin, but the worry inside him lingered due to the goblin's overwhelming strength. He wondered how such a weak-looking monster could deal millions of points in damage and assumed the enemy had used some trick. In-hyuk then decided to activate a special skill called Absolute Evil, greatly enhancing his power, despite not knowing who exactly he was up against. The skill activated, and In-hyuk's strength surged. Although his speed dropped by 90%, his attack power skyrocketed. He expressed deep irritation over the situation. Ji-hyun was puzzled by his use of such a powerful skill against a simple goblin, especially since it consumed half of his mana. But In-hyuk told her it might be an auto-triggered skill. Then In-hyuk prepared to execute his final move, Reverse Fist Stance, which significantly increased attack power but reduced critical hit chances. Ji-hyun finally agreed, deciding they had to end this quickly before anyone else saw them in this embarrassing situation. She activated her special archer skill, Storm Arrows, which removed all movement-slowing effects in the area, expressing her frustration at needing such power against a goblin. The Storm Arrows skill removed all debuffs from In-hyuk, allowing him to prepare for a more effective attack. In-hyuk charged at the goblin, saying sharply that the time for games was over, now that he had regained full speed. As he lunged forward with a fast, powerful strike, he was stunned once again when his attack did 0 damage. The result displayed as 0. In-hyuk froze in disbelief, questioning whether any of his attacks would ever work. At that moment, the goblin gave a sinister grin, clearly enjoying the situation. Finally, in a terrifying move, the goblin delivered a devastating surprise attack, dealing massive damage in the millions, causing In-hyuk to scream in agony. Ji-hyun was completely shocked by what had happened. She mocked what her teammate In-hyuk had previously said about ending things with a single strike, sarcastically wondering if he would still say that after reaching the max level. She was still in shock, asking herself what had just occurred. Then she gradually began to realize that the goblin was no ordinary monster. She was extremely stunned and questioned whether it really was just a normal monster. Kim approached her with a sinister smile and admitted that he was the one who summoned the goblin. The goblin stood beside him, laughing eerily. Ji-hyun's shock deepened, and she asked in disbelief how such a simple goblin could possess such incredible power, especially since In-hyuk the Shadow was one of the strongest members of the Evitan Guild. But Kim, his face now looking truly deranged, told her it wasn't any of her business, and added with a terrifying intensity that he was extremely angry at that moment. The woman grew visibly frightened and tense. She shouted at Kim, asking what he wanted from her, and angrily demanded to know what she had done to deserve this. Kim gave a creepy, twisted smile and told her in a chilling voice that it was all her fault, because she started it. The woman screamed in terror, calling him insane, but Kim immediately realized his words had been misunderstood. He tried to clarify his true intent, that it was they who had attacked him first, and so he and his goblin were furious with them. But the woman kept screaming in panic, which deeply embarrassed Kim. He asked the goblin to stop her from screaming so people wouldn't misunderstand the situation. At that moment, several people nearby heard the shouting and looked around, wondering what that noise was. When they saw what was happening on the rooftop, one of them shouted and pointed, saying those were the people they had seen earlier. Kim quickly noticed the crowd beginning to gather below the building and decided to run. He told the goblin they had to end things quickly and escape the area. But the goblin misunderstood Kim's words and lunged at Ji-hyun aggressively, causing her to scream in fear and panic. Panic spread among the onlookers watching from below. They started shouting that the goblin had destroyed the Everton Guild and was now about to kill the last surviving woman, fearing they might be its next target. Kim was overwhelmed with fear by how badly the misunderstanding had escalated. He had only intended to get revenge on the Everton Guild, but now he found himself in an extremely awkward and dangerous situation with no easy way out. Kim quickly tried to fix the situation, yelling at the goblin to stop immediately and leave Ji-hyun alone. People down below were amazed by Kim's courage and boldness, admiring him for standing up to a goblin that even the Everton Guild couldn't handle, even though he looked like a beginner wearing low-level gear. The goblin actually stopped, while Ji-hyun remained paralyzed with fear, unable to move. At that moment, tears began to fall from Kim's eyes as he solemnly and clearly declared that it was all over now. The crowd misunderstood Kim's words again, thinking he meant the goblin had been defeated. They began cheering for him enthusiastically. They kept cheering loudly, wishing him luck and success in defeating the goblin, which left Kim stunned and confused because they didn't understand the real situation. Kim was deeply surprised by their positive reaction. He had expected them to mock him, not cheer for him. Then Kim suddenly realized that the people didn't actually know the goblin was summoned by him. He began to reimagine the previous moment from a new perspective, recalling that he had said he would handle the goblin himself to protect the Everton Guild. Though that had only been a bluff, Kim imagined himself heroically protecting the woman and commanding the goblin to back off, with her looking at him with admiration and gratitude. He continued to fantasize about this heroic scenario, picturing himself saying a dramatic line like, "Your time is up," making him feel like a true hero in the eyes of the people. Kim grew increasingly excited about this idea, imagining himself as a brave hero risking his life to save a woman from a deadly monster. He began laughing strangely at the thought. Then Kim laughed even more as he imagined that people now saw him as a true hero saving a woman from a monster. After that, Kim approached Ji-hyun with a scary expression and asked if she wanted to die in pain like her comrades. Then he promised not to kill her if she swore to remain silent and never tell anyone about him or the goblin. Ji-hyun quickly and fearfully agreed to Kim's demand, promising not to tell anyone what she had seen. Kim smiled calmly and said confidently that he agreed, now that he was certain Ji-hyun wouldn't tell anyone the truth about his connection to the goblin. Then suddenly, Kim started shouting at the goblin, dramatically declaring that it would pay the price for daring to attack the innocent villagers and cause all this chaos. He yelled again with intensity, declaring that he himself would put an end to this farce. At that moment, Kim activated his skill Goblin Walk, and a chain appeared around the goblin's neck, binding it under his control. Kim charged forward, dragging the goblin by the chain, yelling that he wouldn't forgive it for what it had done. He kept pulling the goblin so forcefully that it lost its balance and looked confused by what was happening. Kim then slammed the goblin to the ground with an extremely powerful motion. He continued dragging the goblin while growling with confidence. The crowd began commenting in awe, saying that the skill Kim was using looked like Chains of Light, a high-level skill capable of restraining monsters. They were amazed that someone in a beginner village had access to such an advanced technique. At that moment, Kim received a message from the system saying the goblin's mood had improved due to the Goblin Walk skill. Kim felt confused but continued playing the hero, telling everyone the situation was dangerous and they should step back. He could barely control the goblin. Ji-hyun watched from a distance and said she now understood why the Everton Guild had failed to defeat the goblin. She guessed that Kim's level must be above 50. The people around her were stunned and cried out in amazement, asking who this high-level player was. They concluded that the problem wasn't Everton's weakness. It was Kim's overwhelming strength. Meanwhile, Kim acted like he couldn't overpower the goblin, but used his skill to push it away. He then used a new skill called Goblin Feeding, summoning a piece of goblin-specific food into his hand. With a dramatic gesture, he threw the food far away and shouted at the goblin that this was its end. The goblin darted after the food at high speed, running off while making excited noises. Kim took advantage of the moment and shouted for the city gates to be closed quickly to ensure the goblin didn't come back. The gates began closing fast, and the goblin kept running after the food. Just as the goblin exited, the gates slammed shut behind it. The crowd breathed a sigh of relief and asked each other in reassurance if it was really over. Kim turned to the people and asked them in a quiet, exhausted voice if everyone was okay. The crowd started cheering and clapping for Kim, shouting enthusiastically that he had really driven away the goblin and saved them. Kim exhaled in relief, thinking the issue was temporarily resolved, admitting to himself that he had almost become known as the lunatic who wiped out an entire guild. Ji-hyun quietly approached Kim and told him that all her guildmates had died and respawned at the Resurrection Temple in Pascal, and that she was the only one who knew the full truth about his connection to the goblin. Kim immediately recognized her as the same woman from before. She calmly assured him that she would keep her promise and wouldn't tell anyone what had happened. Kim seized the opportunity and asked if Pascal was really a sacred zone where players had infinite HP and were protected from monsters and other players. Suddenly, Kim's expression turned frightening as he threatened Ji-hyun, saying that if she broke her promise, he would kill her repeatedly at the Resurrection Temple and inflict endless damage on her. Ji-hyun was utterly terrified and frantically denied having any intention of breaking her promise. Her scream echoed through the entire city from the sheer intensity of her fear. In the end, Kim laid down on the ground, finally at ease, thinking to himself that he never meant for all this chaos to happen. While lying on his bed feeling extremely happy, Kim tells himself how great it is that he got this beautiful room as a reward for his good deeds, expressing pride in himself. Then his expression turns serious as he recalls a past moment. He remembers with regret and sadness that back then he didn't have enough strength. If he had, he could have saved that beautiful woman, Catherine, who was in danger. Moments later, he suddenly remembers something important he had completely forgotten: the goblin point he received from the Goblin Lord. A panel appears in front of him showing his name and current class: Kim Cheol-soo, Goblin Summoner. With one goblin point in his possession, he sarcastically wonders if the goblins will start seeing him as their brother if he keeps earning points, especially since he got them through cunning and trickery. Kim decides to open the Goblin skill shop, but finds all the advanced skills locked. He realizes he has no choice but to select the only available skill. He uses the skill Goblin Gathering and wonders aloud what this skill actually does. Suddenly and terrifyingly, the goblin he had summoned before bursts into the room with overwhelming force. Kim screams in panic when he realizes that Goblin Gathering was a summoning skill, not a regular one, making him extremely anxious that someone might discover the goblin is in his room. He panics, trying to calm the goblin, who is now causing chaos around the room. He tells it that they're in real trouble if anyone finds out, and wonders what he should do. Meanwhile, Kim hears the innkeeper knocking on the door, asking worriedly if he's okay. Kim responds awkwardly that he's fine and tells the man to leave if he doesn't want to die, then quickly corrects himself and just asks him to go away. Kim tries to calm the goblin, quickly apologizing for what happened earlier and asking it to calm down and drop whatever it's holding. Later that night, Kim talks to the goblin quietly, expressing his frustration over what happened to them. He was mocked and attacked, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Kim looks at the goblin sadly and tells it that they're the same, and the goblin responds softly. Kim continues speaking while lying next to the goblin on the bed, saying that this world is full of bad people. Elsewhere in the city, the door of a tavern swings open and a staff member welcomes new guests. Inside the tavern, some members of the Everton Guild are seated. One of them spots Kim and sharply says that he's the jerk from yesterday. Kim looks flustered and shyly admits it, saying he was the one who saved a member of the Everton Guild, but he feels tense being in such a crowded place without his goblin by his side. In-hyuk, the harbinger of death from the Everton Guild, speaks to him with a piercing gaze, saying there was no real reason for Kim to help them after what happened, but thanks him anyway, with a chilling tone that terrifies Kim, who begs him not to thank him with that scary look. Ji-hyun tells In-hyuk there's no need to be so cautious. Kim clearly doesn't look like he's intending to fight, but in her heart, she knows they're completely fooled by him since he's hiding the truth about the goblin. Kim confirms what happened and openly admits that he helped them despite their earlier attempt to kill him, because he needs something from them. In-hyuk agrees and says they owe him. The Everton Guild never forgets a favor, and they'll help him however they can. Kim explains that he no longer benefits from staying in the beginner zone, especially since he's past level 30, and wants to move to a new region quickly. He asks if they know how to get there. In-hyuk asks if he means a place called Fjorndale and adds that he might know someone who can help him get there. Suddenly, an old man interrupts from afar, declaring that he knows exactly how to get to Fjorndale. The old man quickly approaches Kim and apologizes sincerely for a previous incident between them. The man speaks calmly, saying that after seeing what Kim did with just one goblin, it's clear he's extremely powerful. Payton the Destroyer, level 28, agrees, adding that Kim might even be stronger than they are, which makes him feel a bit annoyed. Kim begins thinking to himself, saying internally that he's definitely not stronger than them. Then he adds that if In-hyuk had actually attacked him yesterday as promised, he definitely would have died in a single hit. In the beginner zone Leaf, which consists of 5 standard dungeons, including the grass area where slimes appear, the mine dungeon, the dark forest area, and others. These dungeons are known as open field dungeons, which are accessible at any time. However, the old man explains to Kim that if he wants to leave the Leaf Zone, he must first clear a raid boss dungeon, which makes Kim curiously ask what exactly a raid boss dungeon is. The old man clarifies that raid dungeons are different from open field ones. They have gates that open and close at specific times, with limitations on the number of attempts and gameplay time. In-hyuk adds that the raid boss dungeon is the final dungeon of every area, and that players must be at a high enough level before attempting it. He explains that the raid boss dungeon in Leaf only opens once a month, and the reason everyone is gathered now is to prepare for it. At that moment, Kim realizes their presence here means something important. In-hyuk confirms this and explains that the raid boss dungeon had already opened the day before, but that the damned goblin who appeared suddenly destroyed everything. Kim is shocked when he hears this, suddenly realizing that he'll be stuck in the Leaf Zone until the raid boss dungeon opens again in a full month. He begins to rage as he recalls earning over $200,000 from defeating the level 80 monster, and realizes that the goblin he has could easily clear even tougher dungeons. Yet now he's stuck for an entire month earning nothing. Kim grabs In-hyuk by the collar and screams furiously, demanding to know if there's another way out, refusing to waste his valuable time. In-hyuk assures him that it's true and says that everyone is angry about the wasted opportunity. He then declares that their debt to Kim has been repaid, and the group begins preparing to leave. As the group leaves, Kim looks sad and frustrated about what has happened. While leaving, Ji-hyun glances back at Kim with a sympathetic look before following the others outside. Outside, the members of the Everton Guild quietly leave the area under the cover of night. Meanwhile, the goblin is seen hiding behind a wooden crate, laughing slyly. Suddenly, the goblin lifts its head in alert as it senses something unusual. The night sky is completely clear above the area. Then, unexpectedly, the raid boss dungeon gate opens once again, and a clear system message appears. Raid boss dungeon has been opened. Everyone is shocked, and the old man exclaims in disbelief that there should be a 30-day wait before the next raid opens. In-hyuk stares intensely at the gate, mentally repeating that the raid boss dungeon isn't supposed to be open now. At the same time, a clear message appears before Kim Cheol-soo, telling him that the raid boss dungeon has reopened, leaving him standing in stunned disbelief. Patton says in astonishment that the raid boss dungeon has already reopened. Everyone stands before the gate, which suddenly opened just one day after it was last accessed. In-hyuk asks the old man how many people are currently inside the dungeon. The old man replies that no one is there now, since the team that was ready completed it yesterday and moved on to the next area. In-hyuk then remarks that this means they are the only ones here this time. At that moment, Kim Cheol-soo grins maliciously and says he knew something felt off. He angrily accuses the guild members of lying to him, realizing they tried to trick him into falling behind so they could enter the dungeon first, claiming they betrayed him to go ahead. Kim then screams in frustration, blaming himself for trusting them again, despite everything he's been through before. Ji-hyun quickly tries to deny the accusation, nervously telling Kim that he's completely misunderstanding the situation and that they didn't deceive him. But In-hyuk ignores the tension and calmly asks Kim whether he wants to go with them or not. Kim firmly responds that he won't let them enter without him and enjoy the rewards alone. In-hyuk agrees and decides to quickly explain the situation before they go in. He explains that their intel suggests this raid dungeon consists of a single room with the dungeon boss right at the start, so they need to be fully prepared. However, he adds that it likely won't be too dangerous since their levels are far higher than this dungeon's, but still advises caution just in case. Then Peyton the Destroyer interjects with arrogance, claiming that even if the guild leader isn't present, all of Everton's top members are. Everyone gets excited and prepares to enter. Peyton boasts even more, declaring they'll defeat the boss in just 10 seconds. In-hyuk calmly and confidently says it's time to begin, and they all move toward the gate. Meanwhile, Kim tells the goblin that it would be a real hassle if the others found out about it, and asks it to stay hidden until he summons it personally. He suddenly remembers his past betrayal, and firmly decides he won't let it happen again. He checks his inventory and finds he still has an advanced healing stone, an item that revives the player with 100 HP if their health hits 0. He's surprised to still have it, wondering how it wasn't used before. Kim decides to ignore the detail and rushes toward the gate, telling himself it doesn't matter now. He finally enters the dungeon, stepping through the portal. Upon entering, Kim is stunned by the environment and says in amazement, "So this is the raid boss dungeon?" Suddenly, a steel giant at level 40 appears before them, causing everyone to panic and scream that this isn't a regular dungeon, it's a hidden one. A message appears on the screen confirming it. Hidden dungeon, steel giant's lair. In-hyuk yells at the old man, angrily demanding what kind of plan this is. The man responds in confusion, saying he doesn't know anything about it. Ji-hyun then shouts at Kim in fear and panic, begging him to stop standing still and to run toward the gate. But Kim smirks sarcastically and asks if they're seriously joking right now. He then yells angrily at the team, accusing them of planning to flee the dungeon, and sarcastically asks if they have any idea what kind of rewards a dungeon like this holds. One team member snaps back, saying everyone already knows that. But the problem is that the boss is level 40, and a hit from it won't just kill them. It could result in more serious consequences. Still, Kim challenges this, saying the level difference is only 10, and at worst, they'll suffer serious injuries. Not face game retirement. Kim concludes his argument by confidently asking whether they think earning great rewards is supposed to be easy, insisting they can't even imagine the kinds of treasures hidden dungeons can offer. Kim continued speaking, defiantly challenging the team members who had decided to run away. He sarcastically said they were free to run off if they wanted. He would just take all the rewards for himself. Then Kim activated his special goblin summoner skill and shouted with force that he was summoning the goblin to come and save him. But the goblin outside didn't realize what was happening, looking around in confusion, not understanding the sudden summon. Meanwhile, the steel giant monster charged at Kim with great speed and power, ready to attack. Kim screamed again in desperation and frustration, trying to summon the goblin and ordering it to come out immediately. But the summon didn't succeed in time. Kim took a direct hit from the giant, killing him instantly. A system message appeared, announcing his death. Peyton looked at Kim's body mockingly and remarked with disbelief that he couldn't believe this was the same guy who fought the goblin yesterday, only to die so pitifully. In-hyuk spoke with cold indifference, saying they didn't care what happened to Kim. But he quickly noticed that the gate had suddenly closed, leaving him deeply surprised. The old man then said seriously that they had underestimated this dungeon, explaining that there's a rare chance for a hidden dungeon to appear from a standard raid dungeon. He further explained that this is why they're now facing a level 40 steel giant, and that they have no choice left but to fight. Meanwhile, Kim suddenly woke up, screaming in pain from the shock, outraged that he was killed in one hit despite being over level 30, and angrily questioned how he could die so easily. Then Kim noticed, with deep disappointment, that he had completely forgotten to use his available stat points. He had 26 points unused, which could have helped him in battle. He then realized with regret that he could no longer summon the goblin due to the gate being closed, and began blaming the goblin for not responding in time, saying the treasure had been so close. Immediately after that, the Everton team leader shouted with excitement and force, declaring the start of the attack and urging the team to begin the hunt. Kim was completely shocked by what he was hearing and couldn't believe what was unfolding in front of him. At that moment, Ji-hyun launched her attack using a special skill called Wind Arrow, which doubled the movement speed of all team members. Two team members, In-hyuk the Shadow and Min-seong the Speedmaster, dashed forward at high speed, preparing to strike the steel giant. The old man instructed In-hyuk and Min-seong to be the first to attack the monster and try to identify its weak point. He explained that thanks to Ji-hyun's speed boost, the monster wouldn't be able to counterattack quickly. In-hyuk and Min-seong launched a fast and synchronized assault from multiple directions against the steel giant. But the monster responded with a terrifying roar as it tried to resist their attacks. Then In-hyuk and Min-seong used a powerful joint skill called Sequential Slash, which consisted of 16 consecutive hits. The old man explained that every monster has at least one weak point, and with this combined skill, they should be able to accurately identify it. After the attack, In-hyuk asked Min-seong if he had discovered the monster's weak point, but Min-seong replied that the total damage dealt was 0, leaving him utterly confused. In-hyuk agreed and said there might be two possibilities. Either the monster's defense was extremely high, or there was another unknown reason, especially after they saw the monster roar in furious rage. Right after that, the leader In-hyuk, wearing a black cloak, leapt forward and delivered a powerful strike toward the monster, using a skill called Peerless Blade. But even after that strong attack, the leader said their weaker hits were ineffective against the monster, explaining that it had a special skill called Hatred of the Weak. A system message clearly stated that this passive ability completely nullifies any attack that deals less than 5% of the monster's total HP. Peyton continued shouting toward In-hyuk the Shadow, saying that he was the only one capable of dealing damage to a level 40 monster. But the old man firmly replied that In-hyuk wasn't the one with the strongest attack here, There was someone else who could perform better depending on the situation. At that moment, Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, prepared her powerful skill, Final Death Arrow, telling herself that if the guild found out she had this skill, they'd demand she become the guild leader. Patton was stunned when he heard Ji-hyun possess such a skill and shouted that he didn't know what it did, but promised to buy her enough time to use it, no matter what it cost him. He then activated his skill, War Cry, roaring with intensity to draw the monster's attention toward himself. It worked. The monster roared back in rage and focused its attack entirely on Peyton. Meanwhile, Kim, still lying on the ground, watched the events unfold with tension and frustration, calling Peyton an idiot for drawing the monster's attention instead of running. The monster attacked with brutal force and dealt massive damage, but Peyton managed to withstand it without dying. Peyton mocked the monster after the blow, saying he expected it to be stronger, claiming the damage was minor. But the old man shouted at Peyton, warning him not to be careless, stressing that their success depended on not making any mistakes. At that point, the old man used the skill Pain Sharing, which splits incoming damage between him and Peyton. He explained that the one with higher HP would take more of the damage. Kim observed the situation carefully, noticing that their levels were relatively low and that none of them had hidden classes, which only increased his confusion about their true strength. At the same time, the leader of the assassination team declared that their plan relied on the two warriors distracting the monster, while the assassination team would reduce the monster's defense using their passive skills. He explained they had a passive skill called Weak Point Reduction, which decreased the enemy's defense by 2% with a 1% chance per attack, and it could stack up to 5 times. Kim was amazed by their impressive coordination and power as he watched the battle between them and the monster. He began to wonder to himself if this was the true strength of a powerful, well-organized guild. Kim felt frustrated because he was dead and wouldn't gain any experience or rewards if the monster was defeated by someone else. He feared he might lose everything. At that moment, the monster suddenly focused its attention on Patton again, who was startled and felt uneasy by the monster's terrifying approach. Peyton shouted angrily at the monster, asking why it was looking elsewhere, and reminding it that he was the enemy it should be attacking. But the monster slammed the ground with tremendous force, causing a powerful tremor that showed just how strong it truly was. At that moment, Kim stood up, having decided to use the advanced healing stone to revive himself. He sarcastically said he couldn't watch these losers fight anymore, and that he would help them since he had the highest level among them. A system message appeared, confirming that the advanced healing stone revives the player with 100 HP when their health reaches 0. Kim smirked and said to himself that the hero always arrives late. Suddenly, the system announced that the Steel Giant had chosen Kim Cheol-soo as its target. The Steel Giant used a wide-area skill called Surface Destruction, instantly killing many team members. Kim screamed in anger, wishing he had revived earlier. Several team members were thrown back by the sheer force of the attack, severely injured by the impact. Peyton stood stunned as he saw his teammates lying injured around him, then shouted in fury at the monster, demanding to know how it dared hurt his allies. The old man yelled, warning Peyton not to lose focus now. But Peyton ignored the warning and unleashed his powerful skill, Giant Slash, charging at the monster with great force. Despite the strength of the attack, the damage Peyton inflicted was only 3,890 points, demonstrating how powerful and difficult this monster truly was. The old man continues using the skill Pain Distribution to share damage with Patton, but he takes a very heavy hit, 2,456 HP, and mutters in pain and regret that his plan didn't work. A system message then appears, announcing the deaths of both Peyton the Destroyer and the cunning old man. Kim stands frozen in place, shocked and confused, wondering what he just did. Furious, Kim begins shouting defensively, saying it wasn't his fault, and all he did was simply revive himself. At that moment, In-hyuk the Shadow reappears in a battle stance, ready to act. He recalls how monsters usually prefer targeting healers or ranged fighters before heavily armored tanks. In-hyuk continues analyzing, pointing out that because of Peyton's War Cry skill, which provoked the monster, it focused its attacks on Peyton instead of going after the healers. He concludes that Kim's unexpected resurrection disrupted the monster's target priority, causing it to suddenly refocus and wipe out the entire team before they could react. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, nervously asks In-hyuk what she should do. Should she release her arrow now or not? Her skill, One-Shot Death Bow, consumes her own HP when used, and her current HP is only at 46%. But In-hyuk yells angrily, demanding that she not fire the arrow now, explaining that it could ruin their entire plan. He further clarifies that the assassination team's passive skill hasn't reached its full potential yet. It is only stacked 3 out of 5 times, which is not enough to defeat the monster in a single blow. In-hyuk decides to take responsibility for drawing the monster's attention and instructs Ji-hyun not to cancel her skill under any circumstances. He clearly states that if Ji-hyun fails to land her finishing blow, they will have no chance of victory. Meanwhile, Kim cautiously tries to offer his help to Ji-hyun, hesitantly asking if there's anything he can do to assist. But Ji-hyun responds harshly, mocking him and asking what he could possibly do without his goblin, and tells him to do nothing because he's just a nuisance to them right now. Kim wonders sadly why she looks at him like that. Was it simply because he didn't have his goblin with him now? He then starts blaming the others internally, saying it's their fault he couldn't bring his goblin. With a crazed smile, Kim continues his inner monologue, insisting that they're the real culprits despite being so weak, and wondering why they treat him this way, even though they desperately need him. Kim starts remembering his goblin's level, 999, and sarcastically tells himself that he'll just let them suffer and die on their own. At that moment, the steel giant selects Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, as its next target and charges toward her with incredible speed. In-hyuk realizes the monster is now focusing on Ji-hyun, just as he predicted, since she's the long-range damage dealer. He tries to redirect the monster's attention back to himself, yelling at it that he is the one it should be fighting. He uses a powerful offensive skill called Twin Blade Frenzy, dealing 1,920 damage to the monster. But the monster immediately retaliates with a terrifying roar and an immensely strong attack. In-hyuk leaps high, barely dodging the strike, and shouts that the battle isn't over yet. He resumes his assault, once again trying to pull the monster's focus back to him. He uses Twin Blade Frenzy again, dealing an additional 1,908 damage. He continues striking quickly and relentlessly, trying to force the monster to view him as the primary threat. He attacks the monster a third time with the same skill, landing another 1,912 damage. Finally, In-hyuk pauses for a moment, surprised that it took 3 full-powered hits before the monster even started to see him as a real threat. The steel giant continues its terrifying roar, and a message appears confirming that it has selected In-hyuk the Shadow as its target. Another screen shows the monster's current HP, still at 22,460 out of 30,000. In-hyuk is puzzled that his previous attacks weren't enough, despite the 3 stacks of the defense-reducing skill. He realizes that all he can do now is buy time for Ji-hyun, so he taunts the monster mockingly, asking if it's angry yet. In-hyuk uses a special assassination skill called Rapid Evasion, which allows him to dodge all physical attacks for 3 seconds. He declares that the next 3 seconds belong to him, but at a critical moment, a terrifying message appears before him. He lacks enough mana to activate the skill. In-hyuk is struck with horror and disbelief. Because of the mana shortage, In-hyuk takes a direct, powerful hit from the monster, sending him flying as he screams in pain from the massive damage. At that moment, Kim stands in shock as In-hyuk's body collapses at his feet. A system message appears, declaring the death of In-hyuk the Shadow. Kim begins screaming hysterically, accusing the team of being stupid and weak. He says he would have been better off staying dead and deeply regrets reviving himself in this situation. But Ji-hyun shouts at him in fury, yelling that his revival is what ruined everything and caused the situation to spiral out of control. The two enter into a heated, tense argument. Ji-hyun insists that if she had just 10 more seconds, she could have finished it. Kim yells back that he'd rather everyone die than let them take the rewards without him. At that moment, the steel giant lets out another earth-shaking roar. Both Kim and Ji-hyun turn toward the monster, screaming in fear as they realize it has now targeted them. A message confirms that the steel giant has selected Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, as its target and is rapidly closing in on them. Ji-hyun stops arguing and screams that now isn't the time for blame. She decides to fire her arrow immediately, even though it hasn't fully charged. But she notices Kim standing strangely beside her and asks with confusion what he's doing. Kim turns to her with a sinister smile and asks her an ominous question, saying she can't move while charging her arrow, right? Ji-hyun is startled and asks nervously what he's planning to do. She screams in terror, begging Kim not to come near her. But Kim suddenly grabs her and begins running at full speed, shouting that she was the one who said she needed 10 more seconds, while Ji-hyun screams in shock and fear. Kim leaps, dodging the monster's attack at the last second, laughing maniacally as he enjoys the dangerous chase. Ji-hyun is stunned by Kim's speed and asks how he could possibly be moving so fast, like In-hyuk the Shadow. In his mind, Kim reveals that he allocated all 26 of his unspent stat points into speed, making him exceptionally fast enough to rival professional assassins. Suddenly, Kim realizes that his earlier argument with Ji-hyun earned him an additional goblin point. He begins to wonder if the Goblin Lord is trying to tell him that he was the one in the wrong. At that moment, Ji-hyun shouts that her arrow is ready to fire, and Kim yells at her to shoot it now. Ji-hyun warns him angrily and nervously that if she misses, it's all over. She begs him not to pressure her. Kim ignores her plea, throws her over his shoulder, and shouts that he wants compensation for all the blood he lost and the expensive healing stone he used earlier. The monster begins spinning around violently, preparing for a devastating area attack. It then unleashes the attack with tremendous force, causing massive destruction across the area. At the critical moment, Ji-hyun finally releases her special skill, one-shot death bow, aiming it directly at the monster. Kim charges forward, carrying Ji-hyun at full speed toward the monster, shouting at the top of his lungs for her to end it now as she prepares to release her decisive arrow. The steel giant lets out a massive roar and uses an incredibly powerful skill called World Destruction Skill. The giant slams the ground with tremendous force, causing debris to scatter everywhere around them. Kim Cheol-soo is in utter shock, thinking to himself that the monster had been hiding such a dangerous skill all along. Kim quickly realizes that this attack affects the entire area and remembers that Ji-hyun only has 18 HP left, while he has 100 HP because he recently revived, meaning both of them would die instantly if hit directly. Ji-hyun tries to aim at the monster, but struggles due to the overwhelming amount of flying debris. She anxiously says she can't land a clean shot in these conditions, and Kim replies that he's beginning to see something strange in his mind. At first, Ji-hyun thinks what he's seeing might be a solution to their current predicament, so she asks about his vision, but is quickly shocked when he tells her it's just memories of playing with his friends in the past. Ji-hyun sarcastically comments that what he's seeing must be his life flashing before his eyes. Suddenly, something unexpected happens. A strange rift opens in the air, and a sharp-clawed hand reaches out. It's quickly revealed that the hand belongs to Kim's goblin, who enters the area in a terrifying way, laughing maniacally. Kim begins screaming angrily at the goblin, yelling that it took far too long to arrive and saying it felt like a whole week since he used the summoning skill. Ji-hyun is utterly shocked by what she's witnessing and thinks to herself that she can't believe what she just saw. She wonders in disbelief if the goblin actually tore through the fabric of the dungeon itself to enter, thinking such a thing should be completely impossible. Suddenly, Kim excitedly announces that he's using a secret skill called Goblin Shield, a defensive ability. The steel giant roars in fury and looks like it's preparing to launch its final attack. But Kim smirks confidently and mocks the monster, saying those are pretty bold last words for a hidden dungeon boss. Kim and Ji-hyun stand behind the goblin and declare together that the climax of the battle has finally arrived. Ji-hyun finally unleashes her ultimate skill, one-shot death bow, after fully charging it, dealing a massive 22,524 damage to the giant. The powerful strike pierces through the steel giant's body, freezing it in place as cracks begin to spread across it. The steel giant finally collapses to the ground, defeated, and a system message appears telling them they have successfully cleared the hidden dungeon, Steel Giant's Chamber. Ji-hyun stands in awe and repeats joyfully and in disbelief that they actually won, that they managed to clear the hidden dungeon. A system message then appears announcing that Ji-hyun's level has increased from 27 to 31. Another message informs Kim that his level has also increased, from level 31 to level 34, and he jumps for joy at the achievement. With overwhelming excitement, Kim begins screaming hysterically, demanding to see what reward he earned from clearing the dungeon. A system message appears announcing that all characters who fell during the raid have been revived upon its completion, and the team leader in the black cloak begins asking if everyone is all right. One team member replies that he feels a bit of blood in his mouth, but confirms he's okay. He expresses relief that they defeated the monster and says that if its level had been just a bit higher, they would have been in serious danger. Suddenly, someone says with concern that Seong-ryul isn't breathing, but another member sarcastically replies that if they smack him hard enough, he'll wake up. The Black Cloak leader looks sternly at Kim and Ji-hyun and asks if they can explain exactly what just happened. But Kim, at this moment, is acting very strange, hugging all the loot that dropped from the monster and screaming hysterically, begging everyone not to come near him. Ji-hyun looks at the leader and hesitantly says that she doesn't know how to explain what's going on with Kim right now. Meanwhile, a system message appears confirming that Kim's level has increased from 31 to 34, and Kim is seen jumping for joy, clearly thrilled. Suddenly, Kim starts screaming hysterically, demanding his reward and repeatedly insisting that he must receive it right now. But the system message that appears before him shocks him. It states that he hasn't fulfilled the conditions to unlock a hidden class yet. Ji-hyun is also disappointed when a similar message informs her that she too hasn't met the requirements for a hidden class. She wonders in confusion if clearing a hidden dungeon isn't enough to obtain a hidden class. At the same time, Kim reflects deeply and concludes that just like he received the Goblin class due to the Goblin Lord's favor, there must be other conditions that need to be met inside the hidden dungeon itself to qualify for a hidden class. Kim also realizes that it would have made more sense to obtain the hidden class before defeating the dungeon boss. But he stops thinking about it and decides there's no point in overthinking it now. He starts screaming again, shouting that he has to collect the monster's loot before it's too late. Ji-hyun quickly yells at him to stop, saying that even though they were the ones who landed the final blow, everyone contributed to the battle, and the loot should be shared after consulting the group. But Kim keeps screaming wildly and refuses to listen, hugging the rewards even tighter. The leader and another member stand beside Ji-hyun, watching Kim with surprise and mockery, wondering aloud if he's turning into Gollum because of his obsession with the loot. Kim shouts back defensively that the loot is precious to him. The leader calmly tells Kim that despite helping them twice, they've achieved their primary goal and don't intend to be greedy about the extra loot. This surprises Kim, who wasn't expecting such nobility. Suddenly, the old man approaches Kim and smacks him hard on the head, then sternly says he told Inyuk the Shadow from the start that they shouldn't have caused all this trouble. Kim becomes furious and starts yelling angrily at the old man and the team members, accusing them of betraying him not once, but twice. But the team leader replies calmly yet firmly, saying that removing Kim right now wouldn't be difficult, and if they wanted to use force, they already would have. Then, the leader points to Kim and tells him that he can keep all the loot, but he points specifically to the bow Kim picked up and informs him that it's a unique item, the Iron Giant's bow, and asks if Kim realizes how valuable it is. Kim is thrown into panic and nervously yells, asking what that means, especially since he's not an archer and doesn't know how to use it. Kim internally realizes that this is a unique item that can't be sold or used unless the player belongs to a specific class, Archer. But Kim shouts stubbornly, declaring that he still wants to keep it, arguing that everyone else has unique items except for him. One member snaps angrily, telling Kim to stop being greedy and hand the bow over to Ji-hyun, the bringer of death. But Kim gives a cunning smile and agrees to give up the bow, only if he gets something in return. The leader is stunned and says in disbelief that this item cannot be traded or sold, which makes it incredibly valuable. But Kim laughs maniacally and mockingly tells them that, in the end, they'll have to buy the item from him, or they'll never get it. Kim laughs loudly and maniacally with his goblin, while one of the guild members watches in disgust, thinking to himself that Kim really does resemble that goblin they encountered earlier. At the same time, Kim's goblin is seen hiding cautiously behind some rocks, looking nervous due to Kim's current cooperation with the Everton team, and lets out a small anxious sound. Ji-hyun, the bringer of death, holds the new unique bow that Kim gave her, and comments that it's very heavy. Kim sarcastically thanks the Everton team for the exchange, and the team leader in the black cloak replies that he's been thinking about this for a while, that Kim has a special talent for making people hate him. The Black Cloak leader asks Kim where he plans to go after this, and Kim quickly and confidently answers, "Isn't it obvious?" Kim follows up with a wicked smile, saying that he's going somewhere they aren't. The leader responds that Kim is a truly twisted man. The team leader agrees with Kim's plan and says it's a good idea, then asks everyone if they're ready to leave. As they head out, Ji-hyun glances back at Kim with a look that carries both curiosity and interest. At that moment, Kim and his goblin are shown standing confidently, also preparing to leave. A system message then confirms that the hidden raid dungeon has been successfully completed. As Kim reflects, he thinks to himself that while it's unfortunate he lost the unique bow, he did get a very useful consumable item in return, Thief's Glove, which allows him to steal one item from a character lower level than him, one time only. But Kim realizes that the true prize is the high-purity steel he acquired, especially since he was just a mining-focused player not long ago. Kim laughs joyfully and says that while everyone was obsessed with the unique weapon, none of them noticed the true value of the rare metal he obtained. The next day, Kim arrives in a new city called Fjorndale, in an area known as Phoenix Market. He's filled with awe and admiration as he sees high-level players all around the city, dressed in extravagant gear he's never seen before, and wonders to himself how much money they must be making from this game. Then Kim starts yelling strangely, saying he can smell the scent of money in this place. But he quickly remembers that before he can start making money, he needs to change his gear, especially after being shocked by the fact that he died from a single hit by a monster that was 9 levels below him. Kim realizes the reason. He's still wearing his old worn-out armor from when he was level 3, and is stunned to find that the armor even gives him negative defense stats. Suddenly, the goblin screams loudly to get Kim's attention. Kim turns to the goblin and warns it, saying he swears that if it causes any trouble in the village, he'll be seriously angry. But out of nowhere, a massive monster appears in front of them, causing Kim to scream in terror. "A monster!" Kim yells in frustration, demanding to know why a boss-level monster would be in a place like this, and tells the goblin to protect him immediately. Suddenly, Kim hears a woman's calm, surprised voice, saying she's never seen anyone use a goblin as a summoned creature before. A beautiful and powerful-looking woman named Irene appears, lounging on top of the monster, and asks Kim if the goblin is really his summoned creature. Kim is stunned to realize there's someone riding the monster, and starts to wonder if that means the monster is also a summoned beast, under another player's control. The woman calmly says that Michelle, the monster, is very obedient within the village, but Kim remains anxious, shouting that the monster is drooling heavily while looking at him. Kim looks at the woman seriously, and immediately senses how strong she is. He thinks to himself that he doesn't even need to fight her to know how powerful she truly is. He adds that this woman is so strong that most guilds, including Everton, wouldn't stand a chance against her. The woman approaches Kim gently and asks, "Sweet little one, would you grant me the honor of knowing your name?" Kim hesitates for a moment, then replies with his name, Kim Cheol-Soo. But the woman smiles softly and tells him she wasn't talking to him. She was referring to the little one beside him, pointing at the goblin who was screaming excitedly. Kim was surprised by the woman's question, asking whether the goblin had a name and whether he hadn't named it yet. Kim responded with clear irritation, saying it wasn't important at all, wondering in frustration who would even think of naming a summoned monster, then added in disbelief that she had just called that ugly goblin cute. The woman smiled calmly and said that one-sided relationships are usually unstable. She advised Kim to take a good look at his goblin. From atop the monster she was riding, she continued, explaining that the goblin had taken a defensive stance for him the moment it heard the command "protect me," despite not even being given a name, which showed just how loyal it was. She looked at Kim again with a soft gaze and told him she hoped he wouldn't be too boring the next time they met. Then she bid him farewell by name, Kim Cheol-Soo, and instructed her monster, Michelle, to move. Kim responded sarcastically, shouting after her, "Thanks so much for the advice," then added loudly and angrily that he didn't need her advice at all, that he and his goblin had no problems with each other. Then he commanded the goblin to move. Later, while Kim was in a gear shop, the shopkeeper stared at him in disbelief and harshly criticized the equipment Kim was wearing. He told Kim his clothes were literal trash, and that even wearing actual garbage would be an improvement. The NPC introduced himself as Humphrey the Sharp-Tongued, and Kim, flustered, tried to defend himself, saying that's exactly why he came, to buy better gear. Humphrey showed him a sturdy piece of metal armor and mockingly said it was perfect for someone like him. Kim was shocked to see the armor cost 350 gold, which was about 40 real-world dollars. He thought deeply, realizing that even if he had a top-level summoned creature, if he died, he'd lose instantly, so he needed decent defense at the very least. He decided to buy the armor. The shopkeeper acknowledged that at least Kim had good taste in gear and told him to use it well, since he had crafted it especially for idiots like him, using top-quality steel. Kim muttered to himself that this guy really lived up to his name. Kim put on the new armor, feeling extremely happy, and commented, "Oh, this armor is really nice." But moments later, he screamed in frustration and rage because he couldn't move at all due to the armor's weight, while Humphrey told him that people like him shouldn't be moving in the first place. Kim realized that he had put all his stat points into agility during his fight with the steel giant, and now he had to sell this heavy armor immediately. Humphrey offered to buy it back for just 30 gold and mocked the armor, calling it garbage, which made Kim shout in anger that he was being ripped off by an NPC. Suddenly, Kim noticed a golden exclamation mark above Humphrey's head and asked about it in confusion. Humphrey began looking around hysterically, saying he couldn't find anything. Then he discovered that his special blacksmith hammer was missing and screamed in frustration, saying he couldn't craft anything without it. Kim coldly told him that he had plenty of other hammers, but Humphrey insisted that this hammer was completely different and that he needed it back right away. Humphrey explained that the hammer was located in the underground waterway dungeon near the village entrance, and firmly asked Kim to go retrieve it for him. A message appeared in front of Kim notifying him that he received the quest Humphrey's Problem, with the reward being the ability to refine materials to craft armor. Kim suddenly realized why the materials he obtained from the hidden monster were so valuable. They could be turned into high-tier equipment. Kim grinned wickedly and accepted the quest, confidently repeating the dungeon's name, Underground Waterway. He stood confidently at the dungeon entrance, declaring that he didn't need to worry about anyone else. Other party members would only slow him down. With an even bigger smile, Kim said he'd finish this easy dungeon in under 30 minutes. But a system message soon appeared announcing a quest condition, and Kim stood stunned by the strange requirement. Kim was shocked to see Humphrey behind him, yelling in frustration and urgently demanding that he retrieve his hammer right now. While the message clarified that the quest would fail if Humphrey died, Kim screamed in confusion and annoyance, asking why this NPC was following him into the dungeon.